Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest this week is a writer, editor, public speaker, 3D printer, podcast host, maker, entrepreneur. Please welcome my friend and the man behind, to a certain degree, Card and Fast, Brand Knuckles, and the community paper, Nick Georgoudiou. What's going on, man? How you doing today?
You got it. Thanks, man. I'm so happy to be here. I've been wanting to turn the tables on us because I think I've interviewed you a couple of times,
Yes.
and now you get to interview me. But I'm going to subtly interview you during this interview.
I love that. No, I loved every time. You're like, we'll kind of we'll unpack that. But I'll just start it off. Like, you were the reason why I wanted to actually start a podcast, and I think I was like one of your first. You were one of the first shows that I was ever on, and I absolutely love all the different things that you've done. So, and I wanted have the opportunity, especially with the community paper, to be able to kind of talk about all the different things that you do. So I'm excited for this. I think a lot of people will appreciate all the different things that you do, because to me it's very inspiring, just the fact of like all the different passion projects and the different ideas you've had. So before we do all that, obviously, I appreciate you coming on my lunch break. What's your usual go-to lunch or sandwich?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and it has to be an Italian sub.
Okay.
So I just love everything about the Italian sub, the saltiness of the meat, the tanginess of some good provolone cheese, all the vegetables on there, maybe some peppers. And then, the oil and vinegar, salt and pepper, like finish it off. So anywhere I go, if it's a new sandwich place, I've never tried it before, I'm always going for the Italian first.
What is there one?
And as a Greek person,
Yes.
that's saying something.
So we'll go sandwich. We'll go a few sandwich related questions here before we move on.
Yeah.
Do you have like a top, like maybe like a top three? So we're not just giving one, maybe some showcasing. Do you have a top three in Central Florida that you're like, I'm always going to get if they're there, even though I know you try at different places? Is there a top three places that you go? You don't have to give them to me like 1, 2, 3. You can just give me in no order, but do you have a favorites that you're like, I'm always going to get if I'm craving an Italian, I'm going to these 3 places?
Yeah, so Gabriel's in College Park,
Nice.
old standby, Stasio's in the Milk District. Cannot go wrong with any of the Italian subs there. And so, a third one. There's so many others. You know who had a good one for a little bit, and I'm sad they got rid of it, was Pizza Bruno. The Pizza Bruno in College Park.
Yeah.
Had a really good one for a little bit, and they decided to move away from a sandwich program.
Okay.
So I'm gonna use this platform,
I love it,
as a way to pressure them, Bruno. If you're listening, and I know you are, please bring back the Italian sandwich.
We are a sandwich soapbox, so we definitely want people to stand on top of that soapbox and talk to their favorite sandwiches. A hero. Do you don't?
I could have said Hero, but yeah.
No, and that's why I'm glad you didn't say it.
Are you going to ask?
My question to you is: a hero to you considered a sandwich, or like kind of like a wrap? Is that
it's a sandwich because it's in between bread. It's almost like a sub, just because it's skinnier bread.
Okay. I mean, it's delicious. So I'm probably not going to call it think of that when I think of a sandwich, but I do call it like a handheld friend, and I think of it as in that same realm of taco, burrito, all that type of stuff. Like, it's just delicious. So let's start unpacking a little bit of my intro. So, like I mentioned, the first podcast I ever did was on to a certain degree with you.
Mm-hmm.
You also run, and then during that time, one of the things that I loved about your show is the fact that you would have like crazy business ideas. You would always come up with something. You're like, hey, what's a crazy idea? But what I think I appreciated that is I almost feel like, and I think the thing I enjoy the most about one of the things that you do is that you've created very niche type passion projects. And I think it's a great example of what you've done. Like, you've done like the branded Knuckles, which I'll let you talk about, as well as also Card and Fast. And I just kind of want you to tell people a little bit about, I know I knew throughout 3 things, a podcast and 2 businesses, but I kind of want you to just kind of touch base on that, because that's how I initially knew you. And I've known you and stuff like that. And so I kind of want people to at least kind of get an idea, an insight of where you're coming from and where you kind of started.
Yeah, so the podcast is called To a Certain Degree. It used to be on WPRK every Monday morning from 7 to 9 a.m. And I was like, I want to bring in people because I can't just be me, and interesting people who are doing interesting things around Orlando. So obviously, you fall into that category very easily on a number of levels. And it's a 2 hour show. So I needed bits
Yeah.
during that because you're going to be sitting down with me, and I think one of the biggest compliments that I got consistently was that it seemed to go by like in a flash, because I think that the bits, the stuff that I brought to the table during the course of the show was pretty interesting. And I hope
Okay.
the listeners, I eventually turned it into a podcast afterwards, and I hope the listeners felt that way as well. But one of them was called Bad Business Ideas, where I would pitch two terrible ideas to the guest, and they were always different just about every week, and they would have to pick one. And what I would tell the guests, like yourself, I don't know if you actually did this, but the one you pick, because you're coming on the show, you are legally obligated to take that idea, the one you pick, and run with it. So if it was something like the Beagle has landed, which was droning puppies to people who are sad via an app on their phone, then that was something that you would have to figure out how to get. What kind of harness, what kind of drones would you need? How does the app work? Like, does it have to be just on Apple? Because it seems like people who have Apple products are sadder than people who have PC products. Uh, so yeah, so there were things like, and that was a lot of fun to do. And yeah, a couple of the ideas. So brand knuckles was actually an idea that came out of that. I had just joined a local makerspace, and I was thinking I was going to do woodworking, and it turned out woodworking takes skill and talent and time. And I assumed that 3D printing would take like a degree in engineering, like knowing how to do some sort of computer aided design program and stuff like that. Turned out it's very simple and it's very easy to do. And it's one of those things, like, it's definitely in my wheelhouse where it's easy to do, but people are impressed by it. I That's all I want to do, is super easy stuff that people are impressed by. I love that. What could be better than that? So
No, I think it's
yeah,
great.
I started 3D printing, and somebody was coming on, and she had a small business that she did on the side. I think she made jewelry and pins and stuff. And so I did her logo on knuckles, and I did the rings. I 3D printed the rings. I glued it to the end, and so it almost looked like a tattoo across, but it was in brass knuckles that are branded, is what it came down to. And so I really enjoyed doing that. And I've done a number of different things with that, still branded items like, logos, people's logos, very handsome logos from sandwich related clothing companies, and things like card holders and other stuff like that. And I do a lot of stuff for myself. I do a lot of little giveaways. So I have a 3D printed heart, pixel heart, and I'm always wearing one of those.
Always popular, by the way.
Yeah. And anytime I get a compliment about it, I just give it to the person. And, 99% of the time I'm making somebody's day. And I really enjoy doing that. And it costs me next to nothing to do those
Yeah,
things.
that's awesome. And then the other idea that you had was card and fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I really wanted to do, I had done something. It was kind of like an art project where I bought a typewriter and I wanted to send what I called analog Yelp reviews. And so instead of doing an electronic Yelp review, which would 99.9% of normal humans do, I decided to do an analog one where I would actually type up, because my handwriting is terrible. I would type that up. So card and fast was the idea behind that, was nobody wants to write their own letters. So I'll write them for you. And so I'll write something and you can just sign it at the end. And while it wasn't a really popular, it was something that I pitched as bad business ideas. It wasn't super popular in the real world, but I ended up using something like that. I did a show at Fringe, at the Orlando International Fringe Festival, with one of my podcasting partners, Bob Codges. And at the end of it, we really wanted, it was called You Belong Here. And we wanted it to be all about connection. We really wanted to give something to the people who were in the audience so they could connect with people. So I wrote around 200 different cards, and I gave them out for people. All they had to do was sign it. And it was sort of in three themes, like, hey, I miss you. Hey, let's go have lunch. And hey, we really need to reconnect. And so they got to pick one and hopefully they sent them out. I've heard from some people afterwards, they mostly kept them because they just liked having the card. But I was like, okay, just send it to someone. Come on.
Yeah. No, I think like I said, I think they're fun ideas, and I love the fact that you know, I think the part that I think I enjoy the most is the fact that, like you said, like, you at least started it. A lot of people would have an idea, even if it was a good or bad business idea, have an idea and they talk themselves out of it and then don't do actually anything with it, or don't do anything. And I think that's something that I admire, is the fact that you're like, hey, I know it's a little bit off, but I'm like, I still want to do it. And is that something that you've worked on yourself, or like, how have you worked? And maybe this is like, I don't know, when you have self-doubt of an idea or something like that, like, how do you work that out on, out of in your mind and stuff like that? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah, I think it took a long time for me to learn that I just had to share the ideas. And that was part of the therapeutic nature of bad business ideas. I had to come up with two things every week, and they had to be fun and funny. But at the same time, like bite bouncers was one of the ideas. The idea that you could have bouncers at the outside of a grocery store that would have to look at your grocery list. You have to go in with a grocery list and you have to prove that you've eaten within the last hour before going to the grocery store. And so what that came out of though was me wanting to eat more healthily.
Yeah.
So the ideas came up from something where there was a genuine cue, or there was genuine need in my life to do something like that. So I think part of it is just volume. It's just like, okay, bite bouncers, what is that actually trying to solve? Is it eating healthy? Does that apply to me? Does that apply to other people? Is it something I can help other people with, or is this just something that I want to do for myself? And I think the other thing too is, as silly as it sounds, is like, I'm pitching this idea to somebody. If somebody says, "Hey, that's actually not a bad idea. You should maybe do something like that." I think that we all kind of, or I think there's an older generational thing where you have a good idea, or you think you have a good idea, and you keep it to yourself, because if you share it, somebody might steal it, somebody might
Steal
take it,
it.
somebody this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, no, talk to people about it. Talk to people
Yeah.
about it all day, every day, because the more you share, no one's stealing your idea. That happens so infrequently that it barely even registers for the most part. Just go out there and find somebody, because the person you might talk to may not be able to help you, but they may know somebody who has some space available for your brick and mortar, or they might have some suggestions on how you could do a proof of concept on an idea before you spend a bunch of money and time and energy pulling it all together, because they know somebody who already tried something like that. So maybe they've already made the first mistake. Now you can make the second one,
Yeah.
or the first
No.
success.
Yeah, no, I think that's so great. By the way, I think mine was sandwich related, and it had to do, I think, with like pants, like sandwich bags, pockets, or something like that, or something to warm your sandwich in your pocket, or something like that. I
I
think
think it
that's what
was,
it
yeah,
was.
it was pocket. Yeah, you're
Some
right. It was the perfect pocket sandwich somehow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
something
have
to
to go
that
back
effect is
and I'll
what
send
was what
those
it
to you
was.
so you can share them in the show notes. What you're,
Yeah, no, that'd be great. So I also mentioned you're a writer and an editor for the community
Mhm.
paper. So I want you to tell people a little bit about it. And before I want to say one of the things that I love, that is the tagline you guys have, which is where good news happens here.
Yep.
And I think it's great. So tell people what the community paper is, and then just kind of, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so the community paper, in one shape or another, has been around for 35 years. We actually celebrate 35 years September, October this year. And it started out as the College Park community paper. So it's very hyper local, just the stuff that's happening here. Ads, as far as like the people who sponsored it were here in College Park. And I say here because I live here in College Park right now. And over the years, we switched from one owner to the other around 2011, and that's my partner, Debbie Gunter. And she's an amazing person who bought it kind of without really knowing what she was going to do with it or having any publishing experience in her life. She was a
Wow.
realtor at the time, but she knew how important it was to the community. She wanted to keep it going, and kind of secondary to that, it might also help me sell some houses. but it's really something that she was passionate about. Around 2018 is when I started writing for the paper. I was still working and I was like, I wanted some freelance. Happened to be introduced to Debbie via Ryan Rivas of Borough Press. And he introduced me and I read a couple of issues. It was at the time she had added a second version for downtown. So there was the College Park community paper and there was the downtown community paper. So it shares some content, but there was obviously a lot of stuff that was just specific to the two different neighborhoods. And I had read some stuff and I was like, you know what? Like, this isn't, I do have a little bit of a journalism background. I was like, this isn't really journalistic to me. This is kind of an opinions piece that's pretending to be, and was submitted by somebody. And I was like, I don't want to be harsh, but if this is what you want to do, this isn't really fit. She's like, no, that's not what I want to do. What you're talking about is what I want to do. So I was like, okay, good. So I can have a conversation with her. I can tell her, I can be critical if I need to be. And I was like, you know, I will work with you. Yes, I will deign to work with you. That's not really. It sounds like I'm more egotistical than I am. It's just because I'm with you and I love you so much. So from there, what happened was we combined the two downtown community paper and the College Park community paper, and now it's just the community paper. And since then, we've expanded it out. If you think about where the Main Street districts are, one way I describe it is if you take a pin in downtown and go about 5 miles out in any direction, that's what we cover. So Curry Ford as far south as Soto, Curry Ford West. Over on the west side, we've got now the Packing District next to College Park,
Yep.
Paramore, Milk District, Audubon Park. We've even started covering some stuff in Baldwin Park as well. So all in those areas. And as you mentioned, our tagline is "Good news happens here." And you know, for me, it's in many ways therapeutic to work on something like this because my go-to is, I think, Jon Stewart Daily Show sarcasm and cynicism approach to the news. And what we do here is like, okay, here's some interesting things that are happening, whether that's a new business, somebody who's lived in the area for 100 years and she just celebrated her 100th birthday. We just did a cover story about what programs are available for seniors. And that was something that I thought of and that I wanted to do. And we just, you know, we ran with it. So a couple of years ago, I decided that I wanted to be a bigger part of the community paper. So I actually bought in and became a more minority owner of the community paper as well. So the idea is that, you know, if Debbie is ever ready to retire, then I'm on deck. And I wanted to have some skin in the game to figure out, like, is this something that I really want, not just be
Yeah.
an employee and figure that out.
No, I love it, and a few things. One, it's like a monthly, family
Yeah.
friendly newspaper, and it basically kind of hits. And what I love, so I will tell you, and I think it's hilarious. I want to say to kind of give you an idea of how the reach the community paper has. Um, so and this is, and I'm not trying to ego, but I will say
I'll take it.
so I was in 2023. I was Scott Maxwell. It was like a Scott Maxwell Orlando Sentinel thing where I was like in the paper, and it was like, you know, whatever, 10 people that make Orlando better. I probably got I probably got more people to reach out to me because they saw a picture of me in the in the community paper, because there was a picture of me about like local
Yeah.
podcasts and stuff that you guys were very sweet to include me on. I think I got more people telling me about that and saying, "Hey, I saw you," and "Oh my God, I see you in the paper," than anything else. So, so I love that because of the fact that I'm like, one, people are actually looking at the paper,
Hmm.
looking at your paper, and I know obviously it's available digitally as well to be able to look at, and see. But you guys do a really good job, you know, especially if you live in Central Florida, to kind of get an idea, especially in Orlando, to get just things that are going on, what's happening, who's coming, just another outlet source for you to be able to get that information. And you guys do a really good job at highlighting a lot of small businesses,
Yeah.
which I love because you've always been a big proponent of that to begin with. So it would make sense that's something that's even more highlighted, especially since it's a community paper.
When I think if you think about the ecosystem in Orlando, like I think we're very complementary to Orlando Weekly and the Sentinel and the OBJ and Bungalower. Like I think everybody works together. We're actually a lot of those same organizations, along with Central Florida Public Media, formerly WMFE, and Fox Populi and Oviedo Community News and several others. We've actually been getting together talking about a local journalism sort of task force and
I love
how
it.
we might work together better, how we also create more trust within the community for reporting and journalism in general, but especially at the local level. And so, like, I love the idea that we can go out there and I can read a story from the Orlando Weekly and Fayez talking about Palm Beach meats. This is something that happened recently. So they're going to be opening in
Yep.
the old Hungry Pants location. If you're here in Orlando, Hungry Pants was a fantastic spot.
Yeah.
Palm Beach meats, from everything that I've read, is going to be awesome. I saw they were popping up over at Ivanhoe Park Brewing Company. And so I just went over there and I happened to meet Eric and Megan, the owners there. And, we got to talking and I'm like, oh my God, this is a fantastic story. And so I just wrote the story about them, not only like popping up here for years. And that blows me away that I completely missed them popping up here for years. Like I had no idea that they did that.
I've never had them. I just
It
recently,
is
like, so one of my friends actually, I guess, is friends with them and told me about them, and then
amazing.
I saw you reported and ate a
Amazing.
sandwich with
Oh
them.
my gosh, they were, like, so kind. They gave me a few minutes of their time, and they're like, "Do you want a sandwich?" I'm like, "A Wagyu Philly cheesesteak? Yes, I will, yes, absolutely have one of those." And that's their whole thing is, like, Wagyu, this sort of high-end protein, but, they do burritos, they do fried bologna sandwiches, they do the Philly cheesesteak
They
burger.
do?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, man.
Biggie's eyes lit up. Yeah, so they're gonna be doing that down at Hungry Pants. They're gonna do, like, a monthly steakhouse night. They're gonna be selling other really high-end proteins like Iberico ham and stuff like that. So it's gonna be you're gonna made to order food. You're gonna have almost like a butcher shop and then a grocery of hard to find spices and local cheeses and other stuff. But what I learned about them was they're like, "Oh, we've been popping up here. We do some wholesale up here." But Eric and his wife Megan, they who are the co-owners of Palm Beach Meats and started it down there and love it down there. They're like, Orlando is where we come to eat. We love it here, and they just moved here
Oh,
because they love it so much. And so it made sense to open a Palm Beach Meats here. But really, they were just like, hey, the food scene here is where it's happening. We want to be here. And so those are the types of stories I love. If I can follow up with somebody, I did another one about the Pizza Bruno had announced that he was opening. Bruno had announced he was opening Pizza Bruno on Edgewater Drive in College Park.
mhm.
And so that was great. Everybody was reporting on the opening and got a lot of social media traffic, all that stuff. So I did a story about all the pizza ovens along Edgewater Drive. And so I got to talk to like a lot of these guys about the different wood fire burning versus this type. I researched them. So those are the types of stories that I think I'm hoping the readers like. I know I like them because
Yeah.
I get to go have a lot of pizza or sandwiches or stuff like that. And I get to learn a lot about like why people are doing the things that they do. What's interesting going from podcasting where I had 2 hours, and that would basically boil down to about an hour and a half podcast to writing is like I don't have as much room. So I really got to boil it down as quickly as possible. We did have a podcast at one point for the community paper, and I think I want to bring that back because there's little bits of that story and how excited I know I get. I can kind of convey that to the listeners as
Yeah.
well and maybe get across that how excited they should be about Palm Beach Meats, how excited they should be about new businesses or other things that are happening in the community.
Oh, I think that's quite important. Can you talk a little bit about how people can support a paper like yours, like the community paper? Like how what is the support? Because it's a free paper, but
Yeah.
like how, like, obviously there's advertisers that pay for advertising, but like what are the ways that can be like, hey, this is how you support, this is how you can support us. I mean, I'm pretty sure very similar to a small business, telling others, doing things like that. but I'm just kind of curious, are what are the things that you guys appreciate the most on being able to get that support?
Yeah. So, like you said, like another small business or any other small business, liking, following, sharing posts, commenting on posts, that sort of thing. One of the things that we switched over to this year that we had been doing for essentially 34 years prior is we used to mail for free. So we used to look at the zip codes and the mail routes, and we would distribute mainly that way. And because of mailing costs and paper costs, that was getting to be really expensive. So we've switched it this year to where we maybe had about 50 to 70 distribution points in Orlando. We now have over 300. And
Oh wow.
so what we're hearing and what I'm sure this is what happened with the time that you had your picture on the cover is that they're in so many places now that I think a lot more people are seeing it. Whereas you get it in the mail for free, you may not appreciate it as much. It may look like junk mail sometimes, especially if I mean, if you don't want it, you don't want it. If you're getting it in the mail
Yeah,
without asking for it, then anything seems like junk mail. And so I would say that the thing we're doing right now is to get our subscribers up so that we do mail it out. If you want it, is we're charging $20 for that for a year. So I don't think
it's
that's that
great.
much, but you can always pick it up in one of the 300 places, one of
Yeah.
your favorite, bookstores, coffee shops, restaurants, bars, lobbies, grocery stores around town. You can always pick it up for free there. But that subscription, and if we can get our subscription numbers up, that helps us out with advertisers. And I think that's the last point is like if you think that it's too expensive to advertise in a paper, just ask us, because what I like to do is really my background is all marketing. So I like to consult with people and figure out, like, I'll tell you if this isn't a good fit, even if you have the money. If this
Yeah.
isn't a good fit, if our specific print isn't good, maybe we have some digital options. We do emails, we do social media, that sort of thing. But contact us, because you never know what's going to work out for you, what we might be able to do to help you with an event. If you're having an event, you want to push some additional people there, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I think
No,
those are
I
the
think
biggest
I
ways.
think
And then suggest stories. Tell us about the stories. We can't cover everything. It's pretty much me and some freelance writers doing everything. But for the most part, like if you think there's an interesting story out there and it falls under the good news happens here umbrella, I am so happy to talk to people about that and try to figure out if we can get that in there.
no, I think that's
So yeah.
I think that's awesome. Can you and you kind of hit on this, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about the importance of supporting the community, because that's one of the big things that I think is the best part about it, is that you're putting a spotlight on community, small businesses. And I think and the fact that you guys are doing that, I think it's great when other vendors and other small businesses highlight other small businesses. um and I think when you have that synergy and everyone together doing that, it just kind of all tides rise, like all everyone kind of, it just makes life a lot better and a lot easier for these small businesses when you're showcasing and helping one another and supporting those communities and other small businesses.
Yeah, I think we fall into a little bit of a trap now with the algorithm and things of that nature where okay, it's the new thing. So we definitely want to cover that and we cover the heck out of it and everybody goes there at first and then we don't necessarily see the follow-up afterwards. So I'd like to see more about the storytelling. I think that's important and I think that's something that we do. Um and maybe even more of a follow-up, like what are they doing a year later, 2 years later? One thing that I really want to talk to people about is that I think that sometimes when people close, whether something that came up in the last couple of years was P is for Pie. Love that place, love the people who owned it, love the food there. And in many ways they just decided they were done. Like the rat race of running a restaurant, essentially a restaurant, is tough. It's not easy every day. And so it wasn't that they weren't selling out every day, because they just about were. And, rents were going up and insurance was going up and stuff like that. But they just decided to stop. And I'd like to talk to more people. I think we talked to a lot of people about the how did you get started and things of that nature, but how did you fail? So, and what did you learn from that? So, one of the stories we just did was with Chelsea, who owns Yaya and Lou here in College Park.
Yeah.
She had an unfortunate circumstance where she opened a second store in Tampa, and because of an ownership change with the building, she had to close it
Wow.
suddenly. And so she shared a very heartfelt message on Instagram, and then we interviewed her about it. And I'd like to do more of that and talk to people about, did you have to take a step back for work life balance? Did you have to take a step back because things weren't working the way you thought? I think it's digging into a little bit more of those types of stories and figuring out um, not how to put a positive spin on it, because failing is not positive, but there are positive things that come out of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's amazing because you're right. Not enough talk. There's not always never enough talk, and like it's always easy for you to have like, hey, we're gonna talk about the new place that opened, but then like the Hungry Pants of the world or O Echo or places that that kind of were trying to do it and they
Yeah.
closed. That's kind of the question of like, hey, what it is, because that's I think that's the other side of the coin that a lot of people don't realize when they have a business, or even the realities of running a small business. A lot of people see the glitz and glam of the Instagram, but they don't see, what it is. I mean, I appreciate sometimes people tell me like, oh, I thought you ran Deli Fresh Shreds full time. I'm like, oh, I wish, but no, I don't at all. I'm like, I basically, it's kind of like I have a full time job and all the other things. So, but like when you hear that, you're like, oh, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you, but no, that's not at all the case. So yeah, so no, I totally get that. Um, I wanted to take a moment to thank you because when I started to do this, when I like to start this podcast 3 years ago, I actually, it was probably over 4 years ago, maybe even 4.5 years ago, that I was sat down and chatted with you. Heck, I think I even recorded the one of the first times I recorded, or I even went to your house to learn how to record.
Yeah, I think we did a
Uh,
test one with Elliot when it was still Orlando Meets too, right?
we
Yeah.
tried to do that one, and then my computer totally crapped out because I had an old MacBook, and it totally crapped out. And then that's when I was like, okay, I don't think I can do this, and I just talked myself out of it. And I waited almost a full year before I actually started again. Um, but I wanted to talk about that aspect of like the idea of like, okay, so everyone, yes, everyone has a pod. I feel like everyone has a podcast. Obviously, I have one. You're talking about bringing, you've had two of them. You may have a third one coming. But I wanted to kind of talk about that, like that option of people wanting to start something like a podcast, or things like that, like, and maybe giving some encouragement or maybe even some advice. I'm pretty sure a lot of people come to you just like I came to you and be like, hey, what do you recommend? I'm wanting to start a podcast or something. I figure just a few quick little pointers, because obviously, to kind of share of what you think are necessary things that they should have or think about when, thinking about starting a podcast.
Yeah, I think consistency is key. Is once you get started, keep going. I think once we all accepted that we don't have to do this or put one out every week, we could do seasons. We could have some time on and then some time off to catch up and have more of a work life balance, because it gets to be a little bit of a chore if you're trying to put one out every week. And it's a very enjoyable chore, but not a lot of people make money off of it. So, unfortunately, it is a labor of love in quite a few circumstances. I think you shouldn't let the physical cost of things dissuade you, because, for example, you could go down to the Melrose Center. They now have a podcasting studio that you can rent for free, and it's wonderful. It's amazing. And you can record there. It's centrally located. If you're interviewing people, you can also set up systems like Riverside and other systems there and record your side there and somebody else's somewhere else. I think you have to have an idea, and you have to have the reason behind why you're doing it. The reason why I did to a certain degree was so that I could connect with people. And that's what I did. I did that very well. Never made a dime off of doing certain degree, but I made so many connections that benefited me in so many other ways, including this one today. And I think the other part of it is like, have an idea. So another one that I did for 4 years, and we actually recorded over 1,000 episode, was Your Daily Dose with Bob and Nick. And that came
Yes,
out
which
of
was like a micro,
five
which is
minutes a piece. We did five
yes.
every week. So he and I would record for 2 hours we would have a list of topics each one of us would want to talk about, and then I would edit it down to 5-minute intervals. And that was so much fun. We started right before the pandemic. And while we don't record anymore, we still hang out. I didn't really know him all that well when I reached out to him. So part of this is don't be afraid to reach out to somebody about either interviewing them or pitching an idea about a podcast. Like, I don't know how your podcast came out or came up with Amy Drew Thompson, but like I'm
Yeah.
sure one of you suggested it or one of you reached out to the other,
Yeah.
and you're like, why the heck not? Like, yes, let's
Yeah.
talk about. Oh, I get to talk about food
Yeah.
with Amy Drew
That's
Thompson.
pretty
Yeah,
much
yeah,
how
yeah, yeah.
that's pretty much how Let's Eat Orlando came about. It was like every time we'd hang out, we'd talk about three random it was like during a 20-minute conversation, we'd have four different topics of just like bouncing off
Yeah,
things. And we're like, we should really just record
yeah,
this. And I was like, okay, let's just record this.
perfect.
So, and that's kind of how it went. But yeah, no, I totally agree.
But you're learning stuff about Orlando. You're learning stuff about an amazing person. I got to interview Amy for what's known as the CP interview in our paper, and her background, her passion for food, her approach. If she's ever talking to somebody who like she doesn't, she goes somewhere and she doesn't like it, she's not gonna write about it. I think that's remarkable. I think
Yeah.
that sets her apart. The fact that she was an editor at Playgirl and she had this crazy pseudonym over there, like Cherry Tart or something like that. I don't know if you knew about that. You should definitely ask her about that on the show.
I'll talk to her about that on
Yeah, yeah,
Friday.
yeah, please, because that was remarkably funny. And I loved everything about that. But yeah, so I think coming back to the podcasting thing is don't let the expenses drag you down. Don't let you can learn everything either through YouTube or other ways to figure everything else out. But just start recording and do it sooner than later. So, just as a quick plug for your daily dose with Bob and Nick, we ended it. We did 1,000 episodes. It ended in December of 2023. And, about 6 months after, I got kind of interested in what our stats were doing, like, were people even still listening? Because we never really cared about that when we were recording. And it turned out people were. And so what I started doing was I had a random number generator, and whatever number it picked up, I'm doing one rerun a week. Every Monday an old episode comes out and people are still listening to that. So even though you think that content is old, it's a good way to go back. The other thing about it is like get inspired for yourself. I think that's something that I've been able to do with the podcast by talking to other people and by creating my own content, whether it was bad business ideas or the interviews themselves or something of that nature. Like I inspire myself to do things. So just get out there and do it.
And one of the things about what you and Bob did was, and from my understanding, was like they're kind of similar to what I try to do, which is like evergreen episodes. So
Yeah.
like you can listen to it at any point, kind of randomly, to hop around and pick whatever the topic is, and then just kind of just enjoy it. So, which is one of the things that I like about what you guys have done when you guys created, and 1,000 of them. That's a lot of dedication. I think that's like one of the big ones. Is definitely like you said, labor of love, for sure. What what do you do? Okay, so obviously you do quite a bit. You're kind of go out and about. It gives you, with the community paper and doing things. What do you do for fun? Like, do you have like a fun hobby or a fun activity? What do you do to decompress?
I'm trying to think because my life, I've been talking to a lot of people whose lives are wrapped up, like Seth Kuberski, the theme park and arts and culture writer for the Orlando Weekly. I got to interview him as well. And he's like, yeah, I sit at home and watch DVDs when I don't have something to do. Or Vicky Landon, who is the arts and cultural director for Orange County. She's like, yeah, we just sit at home with our kids, when we're not doing that sort of thing. So I think that's part of it is I hang out with the kids. They're old enough now where they don't really want to hang out with me. They're 20 and 17. I go out once a week and I spend the night at my mom's house because on Monday mornings I go over. We have some property over in Daytona. That's kind of the other hat that I wear is managing these properties in Daytona. And one thing that my mom encouraged me to do, and then I ended up doing it, is walk for an hour on the beach in the morning before I have to
That's
work.
awesome.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And that got me working out more. And so I've been enjoying going to the gym again. But yeah, decompression wise, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I try to connect with people. I've been trying to do more of that. I got some good advice from one of my mentors at Rollins College, Tom Hope, who's actually now over at United Arts. And he's like, never eat lunch alone. That's the biggest thing. I can't remember where he got that advice from. He didn't make it up. He's a smart guy, but he didn't make that up. And that's one of the things that he said. And that, sitting in front of your computer, sometimes you have to do it. You're working, you're trying to get stuff done. If you can manage it, though, connect with somebody, don't have to have a microphone in front of you, and just have a chat and just have an opportunity to connect and be present.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I will say you are one of the more thoughtful people, and I think the fact of like
Out of
the
all the
little
people,
things out of many
out
people,
of
and I will say because of the fact of like little things like I've been fortunate enough of getting like a typed letter from you. I've gotten type card, my daughter's gotten type cards from you. I mean the like, which are very thoughtful, because I think these are sometimes a lost art or a lost thing that we've forgotten, like the mere fact of like, hey, like when you, as you were talking about not having lunch alone, and I was like, man, I'm like, it'd be really cool if you went through your phone and you like, I'm just going to start going down through my phone and just randomly start either calling or texting people that were on my phones that I've been friends with that I have not connected with in forever. And kind of maybe either try to catch up and try to just say, hey, I was thinking about you. I thought
yeah,
about you and I just wanted to say hi.
100%. And
Yeah.
again, like that could turn it, and maybe it turns into a podcast, and that's wonderful, but it doesn't always have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally get that. What advice would you give someone for wanting to start something?
I would actually take a look at one of the things that I think that I've done well, even though sometimes it doesn't work out, is partner with people recently. So find somebody that you can partner with. So Bob Codges was my partner on Your Daily Dose. I didn't know what it was going to be. I knew I wanted to do a shorter form podcast because during and after the pandemic, I lost the ability to listen to really long podcasts. It had to be 45 minutes or less. Like the hour and a half thing that I was doing was too long. Like I knew
Yeah.
that I couldn't listen to that anymore. And I was like, well, let me just go the other direction. And I reached out to him. So finding somebody that you can partner with, that you can even bounce ideas off of, that you're not scared of doing that, that's great. But also look at somebody who's already established something, who might want some kind of partner, right? Whether that means you're working for them. I think in the restaurant industry, they call it staging, and I didn't come from restaurants, so I don't know about this, but it's basically going into a kitchen that you feel like you can learn from and you work for free. It's like an internship kind of thing. So maybe there's something like that that you can do. Or like I did with the community paper, is I started writing there first. I knew I liked it. I knew I really connected with the owner, Debbie. And I was like, hey, is there even, the worst thing that can happen is they say no. Is there a chance that I can buy into this? I don't want to start my own newspaper. I've thought about it
Yeah.
before. I had some ideas and some plans and all of these things. I had young kids at the time, so I wanted to do a newspaper for parents with young kids and hear all the events going on. And oh man, that would be a lot. But somebody already has one, and maybe they want to partner, and that
Yeah.
worked out really well. Debbie and I get along famously.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
No, those are great. How can people, obviously I'm going to put it on the show notes, but how can people follow you, give support, listen, shop, go on social, drop the podcast, lay it all on there. So while they're listening to this, they can kind of hopefully subscribe and like and follow and do all those
Yep,
things.
yourcommunitypaper.com. You can start there. That's where we have all of the past issues in a like flippable content kind of thing, but also searchable content. Everything is there, like everything is its own story. You can find ways to suggest stories there, to submit events, to subscribe. We would love it if you wanted to subscribe to us. That would be wonderful. We'll be doing a lot more events, like setting up tables in the fall as it cools off. So I might see you at some of those. So if you're doing any, let me know, because we
Yeah, I
might
will.
want to get next to you. And yeah, so I think subscriptions, following us on Community Paper at Community Paper Orlando on Instagram and Facebook. Those are our main two channels. We're also on LinkedIn, not really Twitter or X anymore, and a little bit on, not on TikTok. No, I haven't done that yet. And then yeah, just keep sending us suggestions on what you want to see. If maybe you would want to not advertise with us, but partner with us on something. We're happy to
Yeah.
have conversations around that.
Or even heck, even maybe they're a small business and they
Yeah.
want to have they want to be one of your locations
Yeah.
so people
Pick us up there.
can get your
Yeah.
paper.
And then as far as your daily dose with Bob and Nick, you can go to withbobandnick.com or look up your daily dose with Bob and Nick wherever you get podcasts.
And you could also obviously listen to old episodes to a certain degree as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of good ones over there. I have to go back through them at some point and just figure out which ones are my favorites. And it'll always be the ones with you.
Oh, I appreciate that, but you have had some amazing guests
Yeah.
on there, so I do
So
appreciate.
lucky to just like ask people and they said yes. And hey,
Yeah,
sometimes they said no, but there were more yeses than nos.
yeah. No, and that's kind of the way you look at it, and that's kind of the big thing. I think you have to look at it sometimes, and I started asking some guests like when like that sell stuff and their businesses, and I'd be like, hey, like what are your expectations? Like you kind of like there's a certain level of expectation. Yes, like everyone would love to be successful and have this be like, hey, this is going to become a syndicated show and get all these spots, but like at the end of the day, like sometimes you have to start off and you just never know. But I like I record these whether I think I'm going to get hundreds of listeners or only like a handful of listeners. I will say, and that's one thing I'm kind of curious on because of the fact that you've done so many different podcasts and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of curious, maybe I'm the only one that gets this. Have you noticed that like you can beg to get feedback or beg to like have people tell you things like, and it's weird because like, I can beg till I'm blue in the face, no one will respond to me or say anything, but then people will come back and be like, oh yeah, I heard your episode,
Yeah.
and I was like, so you do listen?
Yeah.
I was like, people do listen? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think with podcasting and social media posts, and there's always like, how many people are you actually like downloads? You could always measure likes, all that stuff, but how many people are you actually affecting? And
Yeah,
so you never know what that is because you never know if you hit somebody at a time when they really needed something. And in a very selfish way, like, how did you feel after the conversation was over?
yeah,
Like your daily dose with Bob and Nick, we got each other through the pandemic. That was our therapy session. That was venting. That was making each other feel better. We connected. Bob's father passed before we ended recording, but my father passed right after we were done. And I know that because I had those conversations with him, not to get too downer, but
yeah.
I was able to deal with that better and ask different questions that I need to ask and deal with stuff the way that I needed to deal. So at the end of it, eh, do you feel better after having this conversation with me? Because I feel better
Yeah,
after
I
having this
love
conversation.
it.
Yeah.
This is the reason I selfishly do this, and so that I can either A, reconnect with
Yeah.
people, or B, connect with people that I connect with, but I connect in such a short period of time that I don't get to spend time with them.
Yeah.
So it's an excuse for me to spend 45 minutes to an hour with them and be able to reconnect. And that's why I selfishly do it, because I could either pick their brains or I can either get to know them better. And because of that, like so many things have come from it because you actually get to have that interaction and
Yeah.
time with each other and create that bond. And if I can connect one person with someone else or introduce someone to someone else, I mean, to me, that's really the thing at the end of the day is why I do
I think
this.
it's a good bad
Um,
business idea is that we just create an interface like this. This one is called Riverside. It's a great system to use if you're recording podcasts and stuff, but it pretends to record so you could just connect with somebody. And then it pretends to put up a podcast afterwards because you never know if they're going to listen anyway or if they're even going
yeah,
to promote it. So, yeah, this is what we do. Is we'll
I
send
lo-
you like all of the questions and everything else. It's just pretend podcasting so that you can reconnect with people.
so I actually know someone that does this.
What?
I know someone that they have I know a person that I follow, and I don't know how I even follow her, but she created a fake
Yeah.
podcast and they record every week, and it's her and her family. It's like I forget the name of it. It's like podcast, like a fake podcast type of thing.
Yeah.
But they record every week. They have movie themes. They dress up. I mean, it's a full on show, Nick. For like 2 years, they've been over 2 years. They've been doing it. They even have like merch for themselves. And I've asked them, I said, well, where's the podcast? They're like, we don't, it's never posted. Like, we've recorded all of them. We have them all. We've never posted them anywhere. It's just us recording for ourselves and for us to connect. And they literally do, like, they have to watch movies, and they like, I mean, it is every time, like, I ask so many questions about this. Like, I literally want to have her on it. But then the only thing I keep telling her is why. I'm like, if you've recorded all these shows, because like what they face, they're like, hey, we have to watch this old movie, and like each of the members, there's like 5 of them. They get to like pick a movie, and then everyone has to watch the movie,
Okay.
and then they talk about it.
Yeah.
And then they'll do different things, and they have different, but it is a full on podcast recorded that they record, and they've never once have aired it.
Perfect. I love it. No notes.
You
Yeah,
know,
we'll do that.
right?
Is this is
It's
good? This
great.
is a real podcast though, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is a real
This is a
one.
real. It'll be out there somewhere.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
out. It'll
Okay.
be out for people to
All right.
see. We'll talk. It's not a make believe one where we just have a conversation and we act like there's
Mhm.
questions, and then all of a sudden we're
Mhm.
like, nope, it's
Mhm.
over.
Mhm.
Even though that's what the other play. I'm gonna try to find the name of it. Even though, like I said, I think they even have an Instagram, but they don't like. And then every time I'm like, when is this damn show gonna come on? I'm like, come on, can you just like start airing like the ones from like 3 years ago? And they're like, well, we don't want, like,
Maybe.
some people have jobs and they don't want other people to. And I'm like, who cares? I'm like, just throw it out there.
I love that. That's great.
So talk about doing something that you love, and just being able to do it. I mean, this is a great example
Yeah.
of it. Similar to like having like, you have a bad idea and you're like, hey, but I'm passionate about it. I want to do it. Do it.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. That's our show for today. Thank you so much to Nick of the Community Paper for being on, and I definitely appreciate it. It's definitely been great. I've loved our friendship through the years, and everything that you and how helpful you are and what you've done, and I love what you're doing with the Community Paper. So I definitely wanted to make sure I kind of like was able to highlight that, as well as like all the podcasts that you've done, and all the help that you've done for that. That's our show for today. So definitely please, thank you so much, Nick, for having lunch with me. Make sure to check them out online, or if you grab a paper, I'd love for you to take a picture of the paper, just because, hey, like, I've never heard of this, and now I'm in Orlando and I see it. Take a picture, take a selfie with it, and post it and tag them and let people know about it, and why they should be following and supporting, publications like this and other local publications in your area, even if you're listening and you're not from Central Florida.
Heck yeah.
Definitely, if you enjoyed the
Yeah.
show, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to tell your friends. If you want to support me, check out my brand, Deli Fresh Threads. Do some shopping. But thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.